Hello, everybody. I had run to the kitchen right quick to put up the plates and all from supper, and I found me one of them little crispy treats, and I had to whoop that down right quick. So, life's short. Eat dessert first. Jeff, hello to Newfoundland. Patriot Preacher, hello to Ohio. 2020, good evening. James, good evening. Jonathan Gable, hello there. Doing well, actually. Gear Boy, good evening. Craig, hello there. Keep all three, good evening. Tim, hello to Beaufort County, North Carolina. I'm avoiding the heat and humidity. I got up at 5 this morning and ran over to see Bear, and we did a early video, and by 7:30 in the morning it looked like fog. It ain't fog, it's just humidity, and you could see like waves in the fog, which was actually humidity. Yeah, you just gotta hang in there. But 10 weeks and we're out of it. It'll be cool again. Good evening, Bear. Hiram, good evening. Jerry, good evening. Timothy, hello there. Oh, Craig, I hit north of you though. Good. I'm glad it didn't get you. Cordell, hello. Excuse me. 10 a.m. Friday in Australia. Awesome. Jack Dorsey, good evening. Jeff, hello there. Herbert, just missed the floodwaters in North Carolina. Y'all have had a beating up there. Pray for all y'all in Texas and up there. These heavy rains, they can do a lot of damage in a hurry. Chuck, yeah, you made it. Jerry, you'll be at the basic class in 10 weeks. Cool. Will, good evening. WNC Buck, Maggie Valley, North Carolina. Good evening. Mitch, Blackie, how old were you when you fell in that hole and had to cut the steps to get out of? Seventeen or 18. It was before I left high school. And so 17, 18, I believe, somewhere in there. When, for those that don't know, I had gone to a family farm that was more or less abandoned, had been asked to kind of keep an eye on it while the family was making plans to eventually sell it. And I had remembered there was about a 10-acre pond on that land, and I wanted to see if I could get me a fishing hole. And I'd gone out there right at, running out of daylight, was looking for this fishing hole and was cutting through the planted pines, and I stepped into a sinkhole and fell into a hole about the size of an 18-wheeler trailer and 10, 12, 14 feet up to the top. And it was like February, winter time, cold, and no one's going to come looking for you. And so you have your little freak out moment when you're running around in circles, and then you kind of get a grip on yourself and realize, well, you're going to have to find a way. And I figured out, rather than trying to climb the wall, I took out my lock back out of my back pocket, and I went to cutting footholes and handholds. When I got up where I could reach higher than the ceiling, I went to digging out dirt over me, and eventually about 11 o'clock at night, I dug out of the surface and got out of that hole. That was a long time ago. Sometimes I still have nightmares about that place. Terry, doing pretty good, thank you. Stacy Sparks, hello to Fayette Plateau, West Virginia. Washburn Billy, good to see you. Cow Tipper, hello to Louisiana. Ralph Williams, good evening. Jeff, Briar Smoke, hello there. From the Sierras. 100-degree heat. I hear you can keep it out there. I've had that here before, so y'all can keep it out there. We got a heat index a lot of days now, like 103, 104. You can keep it. Number one, Big Bear. Hello there. Marvin Carpenter, hello to West Virginia. Annette, hello there. James, hello to Hazard, Kentucky. Mopar, good evening. Diamond Metal Works, hello there, Wisconsin. Washburn Billy. Why you keep getting brighter? I wonder if my light's about to go out and go, you know. Hey, Will, how do you like the Mossberg Shockwave? Short-handed little shotguns like that, as long as you load them with light loads, are fantastic for dealing with snakes and stuff like that up close and personal. So when you try to ramp them up to heavy, that's when that short everything starts getting in the way. I remember back during the 80s and early 90s, there was this trend to these pistol grip 12 gauges. There was no stock. It was just a short cruiser with a pistol grip on the back of it. And I knew a lot of guys ended up with sprained wrists trying to shoot that. They all go, "Oh, try it with a 3-inch Magnum load." Yeah, all of that's going to them wrist bones. Yeah, and it short is usually good for light. Jimmy, hello to Tampa. Mark, hello to deep East Texas. Freeman, hi there. Oh, Buster, got you. Okay, Mitch, Blackie, what did you say last time about how to keep rust off your Damascus steel blade? Damascus steel blades need to get a patina in order to reduce it, because red oxide rust is live active. It's where the metal is returning to iron ore. It's kind of unraveling. But once you turn it into black oxide, that's dead. And so gun bluing would work. Putting it into putting something like mayonnaise on it or whatever, or fruit juices or whatever that will tarnish it, i.e. patina it. So you can still see the pattern in it, but it'll make it much less likely to rust. And a lot of them guys in Rendezvous, when they were using they'd put waxes, they'd put heavy mineral oil or whatever on it, trying to keep them from rusting. Lard works really good for it, but it's got to be something, if you're going to be using this for food prep, that's not going to be toxic when you go to cut up a sausage or something for supper. So that type deal. Washburn Billy, thank you very much. DJ234, hello there to Pennsylvania. Andy Knight, hello to South Georgia. William Moffitt, good evening. Greg, hello to Cumberland Falls, Kentucky. Bob, hello to Jacksonville, Florida. Okay. Kenny Howell, hello to Mineral Wells, Texas. Kenny, y'all ain't in the flooding, are you? Patriot Preacher, watched your video today on knife sharpening, trying to learn that skill. Consistency is the secret to knife sharpening. And so lay it down flat, tip it so the edge disappears on the stone. Keep it at that angle and make nice long even strokes. And then when you look at the edge, how wide is the shine that you're making? You're polishing. So how wide is it? If it's really, really narrow, you got a real steep angle. If it's really, really wide, you're almost too flat. So learn what that bevel is and get on that bevel and stay on it. And you can get most knives to be reasonably sharp to do things. But a true razor edge is a really thin edge. It's easily damaged edge. And so most of my knives, people are kind of shocked when they pick it up and it's not razor sharp. It's very sharp, but it's not razor, because I do real work with it. And I want a robust edge that can take a little bit of a and not roll or chip or go wavy or whatever. And I know a young man that had got a real expensive knife and had requested it be razor edged, and they sent him exactly what he asked for. I mean, you could do like that and it was gone. It was like it was perfect little razor. And then he went to chopping on a hard oak limb, trying to, like, not baton, but just chop through it. Yeah. And then when he looked at that edge, and it looked like a snake because it was so thin, it couldn't take that kind of abuse. So sharp and thin, light and delicate, but very sharp. A little more robust, can handle heavier work. Sharp like a chisel, you can beat through crap, you know. Sub MOA, yeah, for putting a patina onto a carbon steel blade to keep from rusting, was the mayonnaise reference. Okay, Washburn Billy. Blackie, why do they say not to clean a cast iron pan? I don't understand that mindset. You clean it, don't strip the seasoning out of it, is what they're saying. You can simply add a little. The order of operations when you're using cast iron is you're cooking with it on the stove. When you dip supper out of it and it's still hot, put water back on it, put it back on the stove, and put it on low. And you eat your meal. When you get done eating your meal, you come back and you swish around. Anything that was left in that pan, that hot water and heated, it's come floated up. And you just take it over here to the sink, run a little bit of water on it, wipe it out, make sure you oil it, and put it up. It's good to go, you know. But if you sit there and scrub it, if you leave it sitting in the dishwater, whatever, that seasoning is going to come off, and then you're back to cast iron. You got to start over. You know, it's not understanding how it works, and they try to use this cleaning technique that they have applied to everything. I will clean a glass bowl differently than I will clean stainless steel or an aluminum pot. You know, just depending on what's in it and how bad it's stuck or whatever. Cast iron, I'll clean a little bit differently. And they don't teach people today you clean things differently based upon what it is. You know, it's the bottom line. My wife and I got together, and I had that little 8-inch cool handle skillet that I've been using for God knows how many years as my camping skillet, and she sanded it. Got all the black off of it. It looked like you take sandpaper to it. And I still married her, you know. But it took me probably a year and a half to get that patina back like I wanted on it, and it worked so good. Okay, Tim, on sewing projects with a Chinese machine, what thread size, type and thread are you using? I'm having problems with the bobbin tension on the lower bobbin not matching the upper thread. To be honest with you, I don't know the size. I just got me a big spool of thread and matched it up there. Now, on that tensioning of it, one, you can adjust these up here, and you can just, if it's breaking down there, too much tension, go to one of the more loose, because there's multiple holes in that bobbin, go to the outer one and try it. If it's the inner one's too much, go to the outer one. And there's a screw there. You can actually move that spring down just a little bit. But if it's snapping that thread off down there, that's too much tension. The thicker the thread, the less tension you need. I hope that helps. Wade, Blackie, I just watched your video on staying cool in the summer. Have you ever tried one of the cooling blankets? I have not. I know what you're talking about, but I have not had a chance to use one. Sweat equity, I hear you. Yeah. Gray Wolf, good evening. DJ, exactly. That whittling edge looks really good. You know, that razor edge, just you show off and you do that. But most of the old men that I knew coming up had 2 pocket knives. There was a really good pocket knife that usually stayed in the left pocket, and that thing was a razor. And then the one in the right was a cheap $2 whatever from hardware store or whatever, and was used as a dirty knife to cut that stuff that needs scraping or strip wire or whatever. And that good one only came out when it was something you had to have like a scalpel to cut. It's got to be perfect. It's got to be clean. That's when that knife came out, and which was usually a much more expensive knife. Hello to Jeff in Eastern Ontario. Randy Benson, hi there. Correct. Chainmail and warm water works really good on them. Yet what I do to clean mine is I will simply use hot water whenever possible. Salt whenever something's baked on and don't want to come up, just bring it up to boiling water and just take a wooden spoon and it'll come right off, usually. If you got good seasoning on it. And I am not opposed to putting a drop of Dawn in there and swishing around to cut grease off, and then rinse it really good in hot water, and then put it back on the stove and let it warm up to dry it out, and then put a few drops and oil it. That'll be fine, but just don't soak it in there because it can get that seasoning to come off. That's the whole point of being non-stick, is that seasoning. Gulf Coast Pine Belt. We're not getting rain every day, but pretty close, every day or two at least, and which is great because it cuts the heat a little bit. Yes, quick clean is fine. Just don't let it soak or whatever, and don't try to scrub that stuff out because the surface of it is. And you think about with germs. No, when you put it back on the stove and you bring it up to heat, it kills anything that might have been on the surface. You know, it just forget it. And I remember family members would lard a Dutch or something they're going to put up, or one of them big pots so they don't use that often. It's going in the bottom of the cabinet. They would clean it good. They'd lard it up real good and heavy, close it up. A lot of times they'd put it in a bag, a paper bag, and roll the top down, and put it in there. And then 4 months from now, 5 months from now, the holiday season, you needed that. You'd bring that Dutch oven out. And the first thing you did was you pulled the lid off. You took a towel and you wiped it out. You put water in it. You put it on the stove and brought it up to a good hard boil for 5 minutes. If that lard had gone rancid, trust me, that boiling will get it off of there and you're back to square one. Pour it out, rinse it out 2 or 3 times, put a fresh coat of oil, and she's ready to cook. Michael Slater, hey, welcome to the party. Common Sense Karen, hello. Tennessee Smoky, what was your first gun? A single shot 20 gauge that had been my great grandfather's, then my grandfather's, then mine. I've still got it. Paul, good morning for me from Brisbane, Australia. 2 people from Australia tonight. Doing pretty good. I got you. Okay, I'll catch you back up. Steve Kingsbury, hello, brother. Can't wait for fall so we can go back to the lake. Cooler temperatures. You, me, and Pink and all sit around the fire out there at the lake. Will, how is Sir Grouch doing? He's doing actually very well. And I'm going to see him this weekend, and I'm going to take my camera, and hopefully we'll get a few minutes to sit and talk. So we shall see. Wade, cool. I'd be glad to take a look at it. Ozark Wanderer. Australia's got some real good, what we'd call woodsmen. They're bushmen down there, but there are really good bushcrafters and woodsmen down there. Oh, yeah, add some copper tape as fast as they spin the cooler there. I heard that before. That fracking cat. Love it. Good evening. I hear it. Chuck, yeah, don't ever have a Roman candle war with the wife. No, no. Washburn Billy, yep. Catch, I'm doing pretty good actually. I'm getting up early, doing my stuff during the day out before it gets hot, getting back in the air conditioning before I overheat, making my little sojourns out. And for those that are going to ask, yes, there's another percussion series coming out this Saturday. I finished shooting it about 2 hours ago. We're taking that 51 and we're breaking it all the way down. We're talking about getting it ready to take to the field for the first shoot. And so I did that, and I opened up my rear sight notch just a little bit. I showed how to break it down, where to look for little imperfections, and how to assemble and disassemble it. And so that video will be posting this Saturday on here, non-monetized. So somebody up there that used something name can't say crap, but we're trying to stay under the radar. Randy, Blackie, do you or Bear remember how the old timers in the humid South salted and smoked meat for curing? Most time it was smokehouses, and it was a combination. Either it would be salt brined and then hung in a smokehouse, salt packed and then hung in a smokehouse, or just straight smokehouse. It just depends. By putting it into that stock salt, and it was big coarse stock salt. And the thing that I remember was a half of a 55-gallon drum that had been cut in half sideways, like a big barbecue grill. And meat would be put in there and covered in salt and left for like 48 hours, something like that, to kind of suck excess moisture out of it. And then it would be put into the smokehouse and smoked. And then from there, it was good to keep, for quite a while, which they didn't do a lot of it because down here, even with our heat, insects and everything else. And so hams or something like that would be then put in linen bags with salt or sugar cured or things like that. Now, it's basically the same stuff that the Amish are doing, but we were just having to do it in high humidity, and we couldn't keep it as long as they could. Which if you had a fairly large family, it didn't last long. So, I mean, you're going to eat this stuff pretty quick. I watched Spirit of the Outdoors attempt it. Venison had white and green mold on it. Some of them do get that, but that's on the surface layer. That's like the rind, it was called. And when you brought it out, it's kind of like, look up dry aged beef. That hunk of dry aged beef comes out and it looks rotten. And then they carve off that rind, and the meat inside is good. So you don't get 100% of that meat. That outer thickness, like the thickness of a nickel, it may be even a little thicker. They're going to carve that off. That green you're talking about, that's called the rind, and it comes off, and underneath it's good meat. Terry, speaking of lard, where can a good quality lard be obtained these days? I've been getting mine from Walmart. They've got plain old lard now. They've got a big selection. They've really expanded out. And I mean, they had duck fat. They had all these different things in there. And about 5-6 years ago, I shifted over strictly. I fry with lard, like my family did when I was a boy. And I really like the taste better. It don't go bad. It can sit in the cabinet. And I've been very happy with it. Bob, Blackie, how long have you been doing YouTube? I believe it was February of 2008 is when I started. Me and Canterbury started within like a couple of weeks of each other. He had just got going and started doing videos like just a couple of months before me. And my very first video was he had posed a challenge, and you had to shoot a video to prove you could do this skill to be in this competition for a prize. And I posted my video. You had to post the video. And I posted it, and then like 25 people asked questions. And I had no idea anything like that could happen. And my blood brother, Micah, that lived with us, he was a computer guy. I wasn't. I just get on it to look at things. And I came in from work one day and said, you need to answer questions. I said, on what? He said, on your video. And so I figured, maybe Dave was asking. No, it was people that was asking why I did this and why I did that. And I finally said, just let me, I'll do a video to answer your question. And so I did a video to answer their question, and that followed it. And for the first like 10 years of my 8 to 10 years of my was just me answering your questions. I wasn't doing it to make money or make a living. I was strictly just doing it to answer questions where somebody would say, how do you set up a tarp? How do you do this? How do you make a ridge line? How do you, and I'd answer questions. So that's where Blackie's channel got started. Tennessee Smoky, H&R Partner single shot. Very similar to what mine is. Although mine was an H&R, but they were sold through hardware stores. And so it was a Diamond Arms out of St. Louis. And my great-grandfather won it as part of a church raffle. And so he won that gun. And it was a real light little 20. And my grandfather, who was a young man then, he was about 16, and had lost his entire right arm. I think it was right arm. Yeah, his right arm had been torn off in an industrial accident. A piece of machinery had grabbed his arm and literally snatched the arm right out of the socket. And his body couldn't be drugged into the machine, but it just pulled his arm out. And so he had a little flap of this, and all the bone was gone. And so they had sewed it up, made him a stump. And he still wanted to hunt, and he's going to have to hunt with everything one-handed. And so somebody pointed out that, well, you know, that fella won that shotgun, that he might be willing to sell it. And so my granddaddy walked up on the porch and knocked on the door. And back in them days, you had screen doors. The front door was open screen door, you know. And he said this lanky little girl she was his age, walked up to the screen and said, what can I do for you? He said, he wanted to ask about the gun. And she said, yeah, that was her daddy, and that he was in the field. He'll be in a little bit, but you can sit down on the porch and I'll bring you a dipper of water. So he sat down on the porch, and she brought him out a dipper of water from the bucket, you know, that they brought up from the well. And he took it and went to drinking it. And she looked down and said, how'd you lose your arm? And that's how my grandfather and grandmother met, was over that shotgun. And then great-granddaddy, seeing the way that his daughter, my granny, was looking at Arthur, my soon-to-be grandfather, he kept delaying it. He'd say, well, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Come back next week. We'll talk about the gun some more, to get him to come back because of the way she was looking at him. And then he gave them that shotgun as part of the wedding present. And it was their wedding present. And then when my grandfather was passing away, when I was 4, he gave it to me. So that was my first shotgun. I still got it. And I think there's an old ways or so of me and Bear going hunting where I'm toting that shotgun. Pretty sure there is. Okay, let me catch back up. Okay, let's see. Oh, got a diamond. Got it. Diamond Arms. Which, what it is, it's an H&R, but the hardware store chain, like we'd say Sears or whatever. Remember how Sears used to sell Remingtons and Winchesters and Savage and Mossberg by the Ted Williams name, so it looked just a little bit different. They changed some little thing, but it's basically made by Winchester for them, you know. And that's what they were doing with the Diamond Arms. It was just a hardware chain out of Missouri. Ozark Wanderer. Well, cool. Glad we could be a help. That fracking cat. Keep going. Just keep going forward. We're all going to end up at a finish line one way or another, but let's see how far we can stretch that, okay? So let's just keep going. Oh yeah, the Unholy Trinity. Yeah, they got cap and balls and cartridge guns in that. I've seen some excerpts from some trailers and stuff from that movie. Well, BLXNK, which I'm just going to say blank. Thank you very much. What kind of gaming do you do? I do World of Warcraft. I did D&D. I got to meet Gary Gygax. I'm one of them old farts from the day that we actually started games. I remember the very first video games. I remember playing ping pong. I'm old, but I gamed. Oh yeah, Western Auto. We had Western Auto and Otasco. I got my first cap and ball revolver I bought from Otasco in kit form. Miss Pam's in the house. Hope you're doing well. You and the whole family. Yeah, Craig, that Ted Williams 12 was made by Winchester for uh, Sears. They just would change the stock design or something like so you could look at it and tell. But Sears didn't manufacture anything. They just went to you and say, "Can you put our name on it?" You know, it's like when you go to Walmart and there's great value, you know, cereal right next to this cereal. They don't manufacture anything. They just go and say, "Can you put your stuff in this box and put our name on it?" That's all they're doing. Mm. Okay, Blank. Escape from Tarkarov. Interesting. Heath Price. Good evening. Good to hear it, Miss Pam. Miss Pam, are y'all going to try to come to the October camp out at the lake, October 15th through the 19th at Geneva State Forest? Are y'all going to try to be there? No pressure, no pressure, but just say it. Love to see y'all. Metalworking. Blackie, I have a CVA modern muzzleloader with a 100 grain charge. What would be the max yardage I can shoot? It is capable of throwing it several hundred yards. But let me tell you a simple thing, and this is true of any gun. Get you a cardboard box, take a standard paper plate like we eat off of, and staple it to it. Put it out as far as you want to start, whether that's 50 yards, 75, 100, whatever. Get you a kitchen timer and set it to 2 minutes. Put 5 shots. If it's a modern gun, you can lengthen out the time with a muzzleloader. But put 5 shots on that paper plate. Don't worry about a group. Just hit the paper plate. If you can put all 5 shots on that paper plate, back it up 25 yards and try it again. When you get to where you can't do it, you're sweating blood, you're running out of time, you have reached your maximum effective range. That's where you need to be practicing at. Now, for some people, it may be 50 yards. Some people, it may be 3, 4, 500. You know, it just depends on you, trajectories, and everything else. But you can't just dial in and say, how far can this gun shoot? It'll sling a shell 1,000 yards. But what kind of accuracy will it have? When you start going beyond 200, it stops being ballistics. It becomes the Mark I calculator of barometric pressure, gravity, and everything else. When you really get into long range, you find out it ain't got nothing to do with that gun. It's a whole lot of math to get it to lob in there. And that's true if you're shooting a 45-70, you're shooting a muzzleloader, whatever. And I have shot muzzleloaders out, flintlock muzzleloaders out 200 yards before. But I was in my prime and I did a lot of shooting. And I knew where my gun was at. And that was my personal limit that I could stay on target with iron sight with my old poor boy flintlock 50 was I could stay on minute a deer to 200 yards. But I had to be dead still and be everything right for me to pull that shot because I was sweating blood at that range to do it. So, yeah. back up. I think I will miss something there. Blank, yeah, hog, squirrel, all that. Yeah, Florida. You guys can hunt iguanas and stuff down there too, and you can go hunt pythons and everything else. Yeah, exactly. Like Bear said, properly prepared, it can last if you keep it cool and etc. It'll last for years. But most time they were only trying to get a season out of it because in the hunting season of the fall you had wild game, but you butchered hogs a certain time of year, and you're trying to get that hog meat to wrap around. See, and so in the dead of winter, whenever it's too cold, too much snow, we're not going to go hunting a lot because all the game's moved out of here because it's snowy or whatever. That's when you got to rely on your larder meat line. That's the reason those guys up north would wait till they got good and cold, and then they'd shoot a moose, and that was their meat supply till the spring. See, the whole idea of smokehouse and preserving was you're trying to get a season out of it. And I recommend go look at Bear's Old Way, some of the early ones that me and Bear talked about. And we talked about that cycle of, you get to a certain time of the year and you're cleaning out your freezers because fresh stuff's about to be coming in. And so the stuff's coming out of the freezer now gets canned or dried or used up. And now you got fresh peas, butter beans, corn, stuff coming out of the field. Okay, that gets set up and put into the freezer to be used fresh or whatever. And then your canned stuff, that gets during the wintertime when you can't get fresh vegetables and stuff like that because they're out of season now. That's when that canned stuff starts coming out or the freezer stuff starts coming out. And there was a cycle there between what's fresh, what's frozen, what's been canned, what's been smoked, etc. And it was a constant rotation to keep all of those up to speed at one time. And when we're about to have peanuts in, why have I got peanuts in the freezer? We're about to have fresh peanuts. So start boiling peanuts and everybody get peanuts. When you're 6 months out of a season and you can't get blueberries, that's when you want to bring out the frozen blueberries, and stuff like that. Good, Miss Pam. I hope y'all do get to come. All right, let me catch back up. I do appreciate all the comments. Jonathan Gable, if ham and bacon is properly prepared, ain't no way it's going to last much. If bacon's prepared properly, it ain't going to last 2 hours. Somebody's going to be snacking. So, Andy Knight, Blackie, I know you've got Stormborn. Do you intend to name your new Pieta Squareback? I will eventually when the name comes to me. All guns earn a name or it gets, I named Stormborn because it arrived during one heck of a storm. And I kind of did it in honor of Game of Thrones, Daenerys Stormborn. I like that name. And then there's my 1860 Army, and that one is Shiloh because I had one when I had a camp when I was a kid trying to stay away from my stepmother. And my daddy named that place I was staying down in the woods. And he said it's Shy the creek and low on the right side. And I went to calling it Shiloh because of that. And I always wore that gun going down there. I'd pull it off of a hook I kept out in the garage and wear it or throw it over my shoulder to carry it down there. And that was my self-defense down there from things that would bite in the night, like mean dogs and stuff like that. And so they'll eventually earn one. Donald Gideon, good evening. Brett Johnson, good evening. Exactly, Gray Wolf. That's when you start getting into that stuff because you got tons of meat because you drop that moose or that elk or what, you got meat, but you want vegetables. You know, you want something fresh tasting. And that's when you see the canned vegetables. That's when you see the dried stuff being brought out and boiled, the frozen stuff, you know, that the roots, the potatoes, etc. Because eating nothing but meat gets bland. You know, even if it was great to begin with, you are sick of it by the time you're done with it. I hear you, Gray Wolf. The spelling correction can be a real pain sometimes. Who's Art Wonder? Yeah, my old Make 'em Cry. She's hanging up right up there. Dance with Empties. Just watched a good video today on render fat for storage and shelf stability. Which is the best animal fat to use? Well, down here, I saw a lot of hog fat. I saw quite a bit of fat off cows. We used coon fat, because they're just greasy down here. It's a fat. And you got a big fat when you'd skin it, gut it, and put it in the freezer whole. And then whenever you got a deer that you were going to take and grind it into hamburger, you took and cut one fat, like 10-pound coon to one whole, like 100 and something pound deer. So it's like a, 10-to-1 ratio, and mash them together, cut them up together, and grind them together and make hamburger meat. And that would actually work, because deer was too lean. It would burn rather than brown. But if you mixed in fat with it, it would work. We'd use coon fat for that, and that worked really, really good. Yeah, James Singer. I do remember back whenever the fries were made with beef tallow and tasted a lot better. Eric Bader, is the Blackie, is Dan Lutz's Lutz Skinner still available? Sadly, it is not. There was some talk from the daughter of having it produced. We had at least one or two knife makers that were interested in producing it, and then nothing came out of it. But for those that do a lot of skinning, that Lutz Skinner would be the knife. So I am hopeful that one day it will go into production. If it does, believe me, I will make a video and tell everybody about it. Gulf Coast. Blackie, how old is the Talladega mountain range here in Bama? About 61 to 62 million years ago, when the North Atlantic plate hit the plate that the continental plate that we're sitting on, it pushed up and formed what we now call the Smokies, which is where the mountain range split in half. Half of them are still in Europe and Africa, and the other half's in America. Okay. And it literally just went that way. Those mountains were pushed up and were higher than the Himalayas. They then eroded down. And so the Talladega Mountains and all like that you see in Talladega National Forest and everything, that's the reason the state of Alabama had $1 million bounty trying to find a dinosaur to put up there in, I believe it's Anniston, in our Natural History Museum, because the ground that the dinosaurs actually walked on is on average about 900 feet straight down. There's that much sediment on top of it, where it's all eroded off them. What were those giant mountains that now eroded down? What's left we call the Smokies and all like that, and then come into Alabama. So that core that we call a mountain in Alabama, that's just a nub, and the ground level has actually come up. The Gulf of Mexico, or Gulf of America, was over 10,000 feet deep, and it has silted in over 75%. And that's just what's washed out of all this over the 65 million years getting down there. So somewhere around 65 million years ago is when that mountain range was pushed up, and what we're seeing today is just a nub of it. And Alabama, like I said, had $1 million bounty trying to find it. And they did finally find one. They found an Allosaurus-like uh, dinosaur in a rock outcropping off the sides of 231 south of Montgomery that had probably originally been like a high mountain valley in the dinosaurs' day and had been like an island that it is, dirt built up around, but it's still, with what was a peak, was just out here at the edge of the road, a rock outcropping. And they found it in it and put it up there. But that's my best answer I can give you, how long that's been there. Will, what is your favorite conversion revolver? I've got an 1871 or 72. 1872 Roberts. It's a Colt single action of a 1860 Army that was converted over. This is the modern replica in 45 Colt, and it's the only quote quote conversion I got, and it's my favorite one. Two guys in the Ozarks. Hello there. Oh, cool, Mitchell from San Diego. Thanks for checking in. And white wine, green beans, and all, and white rice sounds good. Tim Pierce. Bear old ways idea. Store potatoes in sawdust or sand. Yeah, possible. We had root cellars down here try to keep the temperature down. And sand is everywhere down here, so it wouldn't be hard to do. I've seen them done in sawdust before. Yeah, preacher man, artichokes can be kind of difficult to cook. A lot of times it's a lot of work for a little bit of eat, but I like the taste of them. I just think they're a lot of work for what you get to eat. Outdoors, backwoods, yeah, putting them in a root cellar where it's cool, and then rotate them regularly to make sure that there's not one rotting on the bottom or something. You're fine. Well, Jerry, I hope you do get to come down. SD Mountain Man, good evening. Mudslinger, cool. Metal detecting, very cool. Peter, hello there. Yeah, dancing with empties, rendering fat on a coon and freeze it to get it to float up. Yeah, I've seen that done several times where they've boiled and boiled and boiled it. And then when they've skimmed off all they think that there's there, and they put it in the fridge and it will freeze up and you'll end up like that much fat floating on top of the water, and they'd skim that off and they'd bring it up to a boil a second time, then put it back in the freezer, and it'd be like a that much. And then once that's done with that, then they're going to eat the meat or feed it to the dog. A lot of times after you've rendered it down, they get chopped up and add mayonnaise to it, make a sandwich out of it. That's about it. Sub MOA, what's a good diuretic? Well, of course, you can always do I know that if you take too many of briar or bramble leaves and make a strong tea out of it. That can be a diuretic. So can the black Greek made out of yopon. It can act as a diuretic and flush you out. It also make you throw up if it's too strong, but it could be done. Cool. Grouch just let me know everything's good on his end for me to come visit. Dandelion. Yeah, you're right. Dandelion leaves, they can do that. Cabbage can, but it's never done that much to me. But, you know, just about anything's diuretic in the right concentration. I ate, when I was a small child, I absolutely loved Mendocino cherries. That little red cherry you put on top of ice cream. Loved them. Couldn't get enough of them. And then one Christmas season, when I was like, maybe 8, something like that, I had a little bit of money because I did a little hustle. I'd go around and, sweep leaves, take out garbage, walk the dog for all these old people in the neighborhood, get 50 cents a quarter, stuff like that. And then I'd go over to Bessie Dick's store one street over, and they had penny candy, literally penny candy still. And I was in there, and she had just got a shipment in, and she was mad, and she pulls out of this box a whole gallon of Mendocino cherries. She wanted the box that was the small jars, see, and they had sent her 1 gallon instead. This would be like something like an ice cream parlor would want something this big. And she's going, nobody's ever going to buy it like this. And she was a little upset about it. And I overheard her. And I said, how much was that gallon? And she said, it's going to be $3.50. I had $4 and some odd cents on me. So I bought that gallon. I went sneaking back, like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, my precious. I went and hid in the barn, back behind the house, and I went to eating cherries. And I ate, and I ate, and I ate, and I ate. And as my grandmother said of Divinity Candy, she got her limit with Divinity Candy. Well, I got my limit with Mendocino cherries. And believe me, it makes a really good diuretic. It will clean you out one way or another. And to this day, I don't care for cherry anything. Mitchell, Blackie, I want to get your opinion and see it in the stores of bone marrow. Bone marrow is good. You can add it to things, add it to stew. It's got that what they call umami, and it's great to add that to gravies and sauces and stuff like that. Bone marrow will, especially something boiled beef or something, works good. I've seen it used as marinades before. I've seen it the extract that you get fry steak in it and stuff like that. It's really, really good. That would be an interesting to fry bacon in bone marrow and then add a little butter. That's got a cardiologist flipping around, but that might be an interesting taste. Blackie, what causes kitting and tinder that has been sitting in hot coals for a while to burst into flames after you bump the pile? Kinder and tinder, what causes burst into flames? What happens is lack of oxygen. It's burning and it's generated like a heat dome around it that is starving for oxygen. The oxygen trying to flow in is getting to the outer edge is being used up, and so fire will actually kind of smother. And you can bump it or whatever and change the stack, and air flows in, and suddenly it goes back to flaming. That's one of the big indicators of you build up a campfire, and especially in the cold winter night, and you're trying to stay warm. And it gets to be a point you'll put firewood on there, and will burn for just a couple minutes, and the flames go out, and you got a big, huge bed of coals, and you can feel heat coming off of it. But flames is what projects heat out, you know. And you'll put fresh, and it'll burn for just a minute. You see glowing coals, but it doesn't, because you don't have enough oxygen getting into the burn. The coals have separated out to where this, like this, and all this in here is starved for oxygen. It's burning, but it can't get enough air. The heat going up is flowing the air up instead of in, and that's when you take and divide your fire into two piles, separate it like that, and let a column air, and suddenly both of them will flare back up, and you get a big old rolling flame again, because you're letting air. The two opposing heat forces will cause uneven airflow and will cause it to fan up. But that's what's doing it. It's a lack of oxygen. Root beer, sassafras is what they made root beer out of, sassafras root. Hello, Anonymous. Yeah. Chris Evans, welcome to the party. Yep, sassafras, where you get the name sarsaparilla. Robert Hensley, we fix soup beans with bone marrow in it. Bone marrow makes that stuff good. I can remember you buy it at the store, the 30 bean, 20 bean, whatever bean soup, it's all the mixed up beans. And I can clearly remember that being made with bone marrow when I was a kid. That was a dead of the winter meal to stick to your bones. It was hot water cornbread and mini bean, what is it? 30 bean, 20 bean, you know what I'm talking about, bags of that with bone marrow in it. I remember that. And of course, usually there'd be some salt pork or something. We were poor. Fried salt pork was a delicacy. 15 bean, there you go. Yeah, 15 bean and bone marrow, hot water cornbread, slice of onion. Yeah. That'd be a good thing for me and Bear to make at a camp out. Because we can make a big pot of that pretty easy. Take the pot, you put a little butter in it, and you throw in like 2 or 3 onions and kind of brown the onions in the pot to begin with. You take the onions out and chop them up fine, throw them back in. Then you take the pre-soaked beans that you brought to a boil and let them soak, put them back in the pot, bring it up to a boil, add some bone marrow, add a little bit of salt pork into it, a little bit of pepper to add just a little note, not a spike, but a little note in it. Then right there at the end, take fried pieces of salt pork sliced thin. So you get a bowl with the beans and the onions and the marrow, fried salt pork, and some hot water cornbread. That sounds pretty dang good right now. All right, Bear, write that down. Giuseppe, good evening, brother. Giuseppe, will you be at the gathering in September, or should I preserve the chocolate-covered bacon till October? I'm not going anywhere till October, Giuseppe. I hope to see you. Jonathan Gable, I'm going to have a second dinner. 18 bean soup, yeah. I know there's an official name. We would just call it mini bean, with mini bean soup. Outdoors backward, yeah. Salt pork was a seasoning to me, and I loved it fried. It was better than bacon to me. I'd get a hold of the rind, and it was so salty, but you'd make eggs and not add any salt or nothing to the eggs. You're gonna get plenty out of that hunk of bacon, and it'd be one piece, like it looked like a hunk of bark. It'd be like that wide by about 4 inches long, and one piece, and that maybe a sliced up tomato with a little bit of mayonnaise and salt and pepper on it, eggs, and a piece of salt pork. Yeah, big old glass of cold milk. That was a breakfast. 2020. You remember that? Yeah, we burned 4,000 calories working back in them days. You're right. Yeah, I wasn't nearly as awesome as I am now, but Mitchell, this morning right after Ken Rollins, cowboy beans and cornbread. What kind of cornbread do you like, sweet or savory? Well, it depends. Actually, I like savory more than anything, but if I'm wanting baked cornbread, I want sweet. If we're going to turn into something like spoon bread or something like that, I want sweet. If we're going to eat it like you'd eat a roll, I want hot water cornbread and thin, where the thickness of it through the middle of it is no more like a pinky. It looks like a cookie, and that's what I was raised on, and that's what I'll eat. And it was always an accompaniment to whatever. I normally get one hunk of cornbread, and that was to push stuff onto the fork, and you had a hunk of onion, whatever. William, Bill Grimm, yes. Powdered sassafras is filet for filet gumbo. That's what it is. I got it from the Choctaw. Oh yeah, bamboo shoots. If they're not boiled in the water, changed multiple times, they're pretty toxic. Jonathan, when they back during the Depression, they came out and they said that told people to stop drinking sassafras tea, that it was carcinogen and everything else. When they went back later and looked at the study for the rats to get cancer, it was the equivalent of drinking 10 gallons per day. That was how concentrated it was. And what it was is the soda manufacturers wanted people to stop making homemade soda because they made pine soda and they made sassafras soda. You just added, like you say, pine needles, sugar, water, close it up, and it will ferment and make a foamy soda. People did that. They want to make them stop that. So they came out and said, don't do that. It's illegal. Yeah, there's always got to be somebody making money. I have had Scrabble. Now, here's the thing. People up north eat scrapple. We call it souse or hog's head cheese in the deep south. And so whenever we went up there, and my wife's uncle who lived in D.C. area, and they said they're going to make breakfast. I said, do you mind scrapple? I said, I've tried it. Let's try it. And the minute I've been into it, she said, it's sort of a sausage. I said, it's all this is, same thing that I grew up on, just by a different name, Souse. Sousc, Souse. It's one of my favorite sandwiches in the winter, actually, for just a quick snack. Is Souse and mayonnaise on bread. So, two guys knows art. It always comes back to the money. Sanford Brown, hi there. Jerry, I even for here, we go to a place in Hartford, Alabama for groceries called Tate's, and it's a good old time type place, and they still get Souse actually there's three kinds of Souse. How spicy you want it. The red pepper one, the black pepper one, and the regular one. I normally get the black pepper Souse. And but dead of winter, get me a pack of that. I'll just take one piece of white bread, throw some mayonnaise on it, put one piece on it, and fold it in half, make a half sandwich. Fantastic snack in the winter. I love them things. Blackie, up here in Pennsylvania, the Dutch make the best scrapple. Yes, they do. I did extensive traveling and spent quite a bit of time working in and around Pennsylvania, where I was putting up radars and stuff like that. And where it was being put happened to be near Amish or the other groups that are Dutch or whatever, Germans. I'll never forget this couple invited me to come over and eat with them because they liked my accent and wanted to hear me talk. And they did brats and sauerkraut, and they were like Austrian and German. And they had all the mustards and everything else, and it was wonderful. It really was. They know how to make food, and cheeses. Oh, they know their cheeses and stuff up there. So, Preacher Man, cow tongue. Yep, I don't eat cow tongue, not because I got a problem with it. My wife, really, that's one thing. No. She ate it when she was a girl, and no, she doesn't like it, don't want it in the house, nothing. And I've won her over on quite a few things. I won her over on tripe, because I used to make that quite a bit, little fried tripe, small pieces for dipping and stuff. And I won her over on cheek meat or bia. She really likes that. And there have been a couple other things over the years I've won her over on. But she absolutely is not going to talk about tongue. Forget it. So, not that I'm aware of, prosciutto. Not that familiar with it. Sorry. Anything goes. Blackie, which is the better meat to pack for a weekend camp? Spam or Vienna sausages? If you're wanting to have a eat by itself type thing, I'd say Vienna sausages. If you're wanting to incorporate it in to be part of a meal, I'd recommend Spam, because you can take those singles and carve it up. Take your little pot, bust it up into cubes, put it down in there, put it on the heat, and brown it just a little bit. Okay? And it will sear and pop. Add just a touch of water. I've done this on camera. Go look at my canteen cooking series. And then keep stirring it up until it kind of browns up a little bit. Then scoop the meat out, fill it up about wherever you want, like halfway or whatever water. Bring it up to a good hard rolling boil, and that's when you add in instant mashed potatoes that's had a packet of instant brown gravy or jus, instant ground, whatever, the powder, mixed together. Put that in there and stir it up, and it'll make instant mashed potatoes. Dump the meat in it and incorporate it all together, and that's camp taters. And that's really good, and it's very filling on a cold day. Keep you going all night. Sanford, that's a good deal. Mitchell, I'd heard about that. I shifted over to drinking Sprite when I was a teenager. I was so addicted to Coca-Cola. And I just quit cold turkey and quit drinking Coca-Cola. And I went to Sprite because it wasn't carbonated. I can clearly remember that month. It was like my kidneys were on fire. I had a sledgehammer headache from the time I opened my eyes to the time I went to sleep. I was so addicted to caffeine, and I finally weaned myself off of it. And I still drink coffee occasionally, tea occasionally, another type of soda occasionally. But for my standard, I'm going to pick that up. Been doing that since I was like 16 or 17. And I can tell you that back when we had real cane sugar in the sodas, you could tell the difference. They tasted a lot better. James, yeah. Chase your sister with it, I hear you. James Singer, favorite root beer. Bargs is okay. Frost is pretty good. I'm trying to remember the name of it. You still get it at Cracker Barrel. They sell them. I don't know right off the top of my head, but I'm drawing a blank. But yeah, there is a favorite kind of root beer for me. And I drink root beer once in a while, mostly as a little treat. So if I ever look at my wife and go, honey, I need a beer, she knows I'm talking about root beer because I don't drink beer, you know. And so if I say, give me a beer, it means a root beer. Anything goes. Glad to do it. Oh, prosciutto. Yeah, really thin ham. They would do sugar cure or salt cure ham and slice it. I mean, you see through it thin. I remember those. But I don't remember anybody particularly putting it up to do that. You know, it was sliced that thin and then it would be incorporated into a lot of the church dishes. The ladies like to show off at the church. And so it was that thin prosciutto type, a thin piece of some sort of cheese, and then like a dill pickle, sliced up piece, long piece of dill pickle, rolled, and then another type of meat. I think it was like roast beef around the outside of it. And you ate it kind of like a hot dog. I remember that at church functions and stuff. So Tad, Blackie, you remember the old cast iron cooking stoves? If so, did you ever cook on one? I have cooked on one before. Both the big kitchen stove and the little round pot belly stove. I have cooked on them before. I was raised by, in fact, the house next door to me still had one when I was a boy, but they had an electric one sitting next to it. But the house still had the old, big old metal stove, you know, wood stove. And I remember one or two Thanksgivings or Christmases going over and helping the little old lady, and we cooked on that stove. And I had family members that, as late as the mid 70s, still had wood stoves. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Panzer, what about Rocky Mountain oysters? We call them something different down here. I remember eating a lot of them when I was working on grandfather's farm. My granddaddy's favorite breakfast was balls and brains, and that was pork brains and cow testicles. That he would slice the testicle almost in two and butterfly it out flat and put it on a griddle and grill it. And then whenever that was done, he'd slide it out of the way. He'd put him a couple of onions up there with butter and let that sizzle and almost burn, to be honest. And then he would throw the pork brains up there on it, flip them just a couple of seconds, and then crack two eggs that he'd beat up, pour over the top of it. And so it was eggs with brains and then the testicles on the side. Balls and brains. That was his favorite breakfast. I ate it. Wasn't a favorite, but I could eat it, you know. Mudslinger. Worm tasted like turkey vein. Worms may taste different where you're at. The couple times that I have ate worm to demonstrate or whatever at the thing, you wash them all real good and you get the mud out of them and etc. and eat them. And to me, well, the only thing I can really give you a taste comparison to is, you know, the real fatty deposit on a chicken butt, that nub back there, the preacher's nose, that cartilage, like that's what it tastes like to me. But you know, I haven't done that in 30 years. You know, it was something we were doing survival stuff and all like that. And you had to go out for 3, 4 days or whatever and feed yourself off the land. It also teaches you to be a better hunter and be a better fisherman. And I ain't eating worms. I'll show you how to fish. I'll show you how to down and dirty do a trap. We'll, by God, we'll eat tonight. If anything can be ate out of that stream, we'll have something to eat. We ain't got to eat worms. We'll find something else, you know. A&W is pretty good, though, and the root beers. Wade, yeah, one of my favorite things to take camping is sweet potatoes because they require no refrigeration. Great to have as a side dish at deer camp for dinner at night. I agree. And if you add butter and real butter, not margarine, real butter that is salted, does not have to have refrigeration for a couple of days. So you can keep it sealed up in a tin and take it to camp. I wouldn't recommend that in 110 degrees, but you know what I mean, and reasonable. And a big sweet potato with brown sugar and butter is a dessert to me. That's what I grew up eating it. I never saw it as a side. It was always at the end of the meal as a dessert. And so in my mind, that's what it is. And so when people say, I'd like a T-bone steak and a sweet potato on the side, that's like, in my mind, what I'm hearing is I'd like a T-bone steak and banana split as a side with it. They just don't go together in my mind, you know. But hey, it's just the way it is. Brett Johnson, I hear you. Preacher man, eat fish before bait. Amen. Talking about being sneaky. Um, Fishing leader and small treble hooks. Where you get like 10 snelled hooks, unhook it and put small treble hooks on them. Because you can find something for bait. Put you some bank line and hang it about that high off the ground, the big old wad of worms or fish guts or whatever on it, right? Make sure it's hooked to a real springy limb. And odds are tomorrow when you come back to it, it'll have a coon or a possum sitting there looking at you because it's going to bite down. It's going to hang him up in the mouth. And he ain't going to be able to get that treble hook out. And he'll panic for just a minute, but it hurts to pull, and he'll end up just sitting there waiting for you to get back. And you have you a good wampum stick. And then once you kill him, you pull that hook out, and you gut him, and you put his guts back on the hook, and you go back. And you got 10 or 15 of them strung along the creek bank. You got a steady supply of food. Won't use them for fishing. I get out in the creek, and I'll make me a weir and drive fish into it and block it off. I'll have fish. If there's any kind of fish in that creek, I'll have food. Screw that being hook and line. I'm hungry. You know, be sneaky and down and dirty. You know, how bad do you want to live? Tim Pierce, ever thought about doing 101 uses for a cast net? I have not. Where I'm at down here, I rarely ever used a cast net. We used seines, which were not approved by the establishment. So cast nets and all kind of fall into that. Down at the beach and all, yeah, they use that in the inlets. But where I'm at up here in the woods, we didn't use cast nets. Is my light flickering? Dances with empties. Okay. I'm about to throw an old term on you guys. Acidity. Y'all know what an acidity is? They put it on sick kids. I had one putting on me when I was young. Acidity is a little thing they'd make up that stinks. Oh my God, it stinks. Make your eyes water. the sick kid, it'd make his nose stay open. It kind of like Vicks to keep your head open, right? But it also, none of the kids wanted to play with him because he stank so bad. And that kept whatever the sick kid had from spreading because nobody wanted to get near him because he stank because of the acidity bag. Battle Rattle 76, well, welcome to the party. M80 and tennis balls will work for that type of stuff. Yep, I've actually had one put around my neck as a child. I don't know what all was in it, and I don't really want to know, but it's God, it stank. Steve, love your hammock videos. Thinking about getting one of my own. Which one hammock do you have? I have the 11-foot double wide hammock. Is my standard camping hammock when I'm going and setting up. I think you may have seen one of my videos. I've got a blue 30-gallon barrel I got from a good friend, Dan Lutz. And I carry that whole camp inside of that. So I've got my underquilt, my top quilt. I've got the double hammock, and then I've got both the big tarp that folds and closes. I forget the name of it. And then I also have their big, what's the word? It's not Ponderosa. It starts with a P, but it's their hot tent that won win. That is 14 feet from tip to tip, and that will go over the whole thing and anchor the ground. And you put side poles on it, and it turns it into a wall tent that your hammock's hanging in. That's my big camp. And so I recommend to people, if you're an average size, human, get the 11-footer double wide. You'll be very happy. If you're a big boy, like Dan Lutz was, they make a 12-foot double wide, and he was 6'7", right at 400 pounds, and it swallowed him. He'd lay down, and he had to reach up like that to reach the top of it and bring the sides up. So that's what I'd recommend. Penumbra, thank you, 2020. Yeah, it's the Penumbra tent, their hot tent. Now, they make that same tent by a different name, and it doesn't have a smoke flap hole. If you have no intention of putting a wood burning or something stove in there, don't get that one. Get the other one that they sell that does not have the smoke flap in it. Because the way the roof wants to bend, it wants to leak in that hole if you don't do a little something. And I've done a video about it, I know, talking about how to pull that out to keep it from leaking. But you can put a buddy heater in one where you ain't got to have a wood stove and can be just as comfortable and happy with it. Make sure you got ventilation and etc. And a buddy heater is set up to be used in shacks and stuff like that for ice fishing and everything else. And it's got a low oxygen sensor on it. So that might be something you consider. And if I was going to do it again, I wouldn't get the one with the smoke flap in it. Even though I've got a wood stove to go in it, I wouldn't get it. I would get the one without it and just use a buddy heater. Gun adapter. Glad you do. That works really well. Glad that you're enjoying the haversack. Andrew Kelso, ever fly fish? Yes, I do. I love working a fly rod. And Jerry, sorry to hear about your penumbra meeting an unfortunate end last year. Flint tool. Yeah, Andrew Kessel, what do you recommend? I run an 8-foot medium action rod. I use a automatic fly reel because most of the stuff I get to do is splat fishing. Really, you don't have the big wide open spaces like you do out west where you can do these long casts. It's kind of hard to find those places. Most time you got a bunch of overhanging limbs right over your head, so it's side casting mostly, and you're gonna hang up a lot. So it's being able to work short line and get a little length, and then being able to hit that button and take up all that slack right now, because the bass or brim hit it, they're gone. And so, but that's what, and I have said I was going to do it. And me and Bear, in fact, were talking this morning at 5:30 about going out to his lake and doing a little bit of fishing in this coming week, and using either the hobo fisherman or whatever. And so I will write it down right now to take fly rod. And talk about fly fishing, which down here in the South, what we do is really called splat fishing, which means cane pole with a reel on it. And we'll talk about that. But it's not much different what you hear about out west when they talk about tenkara fishing, which is a nice fancy word for it. It's cane pole fishing, but we do it with fly rods. And I recommend a woolly spider and a woolly booger, a mouse, any of the green or red popping plugs work really good. And my little super secret hidey hole one, it's a rubber skirt. It's only about that long, and it's the main body is like kind of like a pea, you know, and then it's got the like a squid legs on it, right? I hook that backwards on the hook, so the squid things are going up the line, and flip it out there and let it sit, and I'll twitch, and it'll float. And I guess that the bass and brim think it's something like a grub with its guts out, and they'll nail it, you know. So yeah, we'll see about doing that. Tim Harper, glad you are. Outdoors and backwoods, glad you like it. That solo bivvy is actually pretty handy. Oh yeah, swamp onions, wild. Oh God, yeah. There's little bitty old small wild onions. My God, they'll make your eyes water from 10 feet away. Oh my God. You know what the secret to making them is? I'll tell you. You feed onions to cows, and when they poop, onions spring up where their poop was, and you end up with these green onions sticking up, and you'll pull it up. I mean, the poop's long gone, you know, but you pull it up, and that head of that onion won't be the size of a gumball. The flavor is fantastic, but my God, you know, you'll choke trying to breathe the air of somebody that eats it. It is unbelievable. It is so powerful. I don't know why it concentrates so much of that. That's what they do. They'd feed them to cows, you know, and they'd poop them out there, and you'd go find them. They called them swamp onions. We were at a big event. I'll tell this one on Grouch. We were at a big living history event where we were running it, and there's probably 6,000 people at this thing. And we were walking around the Trader's Row, me and my wife, and this friend of ours who is now passed, named Al Seward. We called him Squire. And of course, this is a cow pasture that they were set up in, everybody to camp. And we're in one of the vendors looking at stuff that they're selling, and I happened to look down. There's a big old stalk of them sticking up. And I mentioned something about onions, and Squire went, onions? I reached in and pulled one out of the dirt and cleaned it off and took a bite. Yeah, if it looks like an onion, but it does not taste like an onion, it's not an onion. They're toxic. But if it tastes like an onion, it's an onion. Okay? That's how you make sure you're not getting anything toxic. And this was absolutely an onion. And he bit into it, and the flavor was fantastic. God, his breath in just 90 seconds would just knock you backwards. And he picked a big old hat full of them. And then he went back to Grouch's camp. Grouch is laying in the tent asleep, taking a nap. And Grouch, Squire walks up to his tent, meaning to talk to him, but seeing him asleep, he just sat down by his fire and took his knife and went to cutting off all the stuff he didn't want. And he got the handful of onions out of it, you know, about a baseball size worth of onions, and he took the rest of the stuff and he just threw it on Grouch's fire. And we had the thing where the smoke comes up about 4 feet and it's just going like that. People downrange 300 yards away, it's like you'd hit them with CS gas. People were gagging and crying and come running up there. You know, Squire goes walking back to his tent, oblivious. Grouch is in there asleep, and then all these people with snot running and eyes running, ready to kill him, come boiling up there, yelling and screaming. And he wakes up going, I didn't do it. I was asleep, you know. And it was because of them onions. Oh my God. They were so, oh, they taste so good in stews, but oh my God. It just, woo, give you chills. Sub MOA, did you say you use a floating or a sinking line? Usually I use a floating line, but I normally use like a 4-foot leader of standard, like 4 or 6 pound monofilament, and that'll sink. And so if I have a line that I want, a lure I want to float, I'll take silicone and run over that line and let it get a little buoyant, not truly, and that way it'll let it very slowly sink. But most time I use floating line, and because when I'm flipping like that, they're going to pop up and you've only got a minute or so on target before you're going to pull and go somewhere else, because either the current's taking it or it's past your target area. You're pretty sure there's nothing going to be there and you got to move. Virginia Bushcrafter, good evening, sir. Thanks for dropping in. Yes, Peter, you got a Kukri and you're having trouble sharpening it. Get a diamond. It's because when they harden those, a lot of times the back edge of the knife is a 25 and the cutting edge is a 70, and they're just too hard. So you need a diamond rod. This is one of them Lansky's like you get from Smoky Mountain Knife Works. Will have everything. Just a round rod with diamond dust impregnated on it. And this is what you want for doing it. Even a lot of times on a good Kukri, a file will slide on it. It's harder than a file. And so diamond is the only thing you're going to find that's going to reliably cut it and sharpen it. And so that's what I recommend is diamond hones for it. Just to get a round diamond hone. Harold, it's kind of a more intense. Down here where I'm at, it's usually Vidalia onions. Vidalia gets their thing from where they're grown. It's a soil composition. But a lot of times families would get boxes of Vidalia onions because they're doing all kinds of stuff or whatever. And if those onions start to get a little old and they didn't get used or whatever, they'd pitch them to the cows, you know. And somehow in the percolation of going through the biological process, it stops being this big old onion and it becomes these small little like inch or less diameter onion with a tall green on it. But wow, you know, we just got to call them swamp onions. You always found a swamp onion in the cow pasture. Mudslinger. Yeah, I had heard something about people dressing up like Tyrannosaurus Rex and stuff, jumping out, doing that stuff. That works up north, I guess. Down here, people tend to punch you when you spook them. So, gun adapters. Your thoughts on the S-bit folding pocket stove? Excuse me. In a real enclosed space, the fumes of it are kind of bad. As long as you got good ventilation, it heats well. It does a pretty good job. It does a really good job at heating. You can cook on it to a degree. but the heat of it can be a little too much, and you can burn stuff easy. So keep it moving or keep moisture with it. So if you want to brown a little piece of meat in a thing, throw a little bit of water, not, flood it, but, put a little thin layer of water in there and let that water come to boil, and then put the meat into it, and the heat will then keep the boiling water will keep the meat dancing on that hot surface, and it doesn't really want to stick because of a layer of moisture. You every so often stir it up, get a little more water underneath it, and you can kind of fry with it. But I used one of those for quite a while as a carry in a haversack, as a quick heat. I prefer the Trangia stoves to it now because I can turn them on and off. And the SBIT, once you ignite it, you got to let it go. But they work fairly well. They really do. Jonathan Gable, I have not, right off the top of my head, had anybody that has had one of those out of the Sportsman's Guide that I know of. Woo, there. What is a good, inexpensive kukri to start out with? What I tell everybody is, if you want to start out and you just want to try the design out, go get a cold steel, the small one. There's a long one and a small one. The small one, cold steel kukri machete. Start with it. They're usually made out of decent steel. You get all the curves. You get the idea. It doesn't have the weight yet for you to use it as a chopper, as far as like splitting firewood and all. It will do light stuff, Plenty fine for campfire prep and stuff like that. And then take that handle of that thing, which is really too aggressive, and wrap it with cord. And that's what I've got. One rides in the door of my truck, and as a start out, don't know if I want to put any real money into it or not. Start with that. If you like that, then go look at Kukri House or Gurkha House on Amazon and stuff like that, and pick one out that you like. The secret to getting one that's a real one that's coming out of the Himalayas or whatever is, if it's very ornate, probably it's a second. Now, let me explain that. They start out with the steel. They cut it out with a chisel. They heat it up, and then it's called a commie, but we'd say a blacksmith, cuts out the rough shape, and then he hands it off to the knife guy, who heats it up and starts forging it and makes the shape. Then somebody makes the handle, and etc. At each step. If he detects a problem with this one in any way, it becomes fancy. They will shine it up real pretty. They'll put inlay and everything into it. Where we assume fancier is higher quality, they're betting on the fancy one isn't going to be used. It's for the tourist trade and it's for show. So if this piece of metal's got a design flaw in it, and it could, possibly break, we'll make it a pretty one and still sell it. See? But the plainer, the better. Okay. Hold on. This is mine. This is mine. This is a working one called a villager. And notice this kind of chiseled in engraving, this hollow shape right here. There's nothing in it. It's just plain. Okay. Now look at this one, which is a suruptite. Okay, and now you look and you see this one has got all that fancy done in there. This was meant to be like an officer's kukri, and this was sent to me by someone in Australia who their father had served with the Gurkhas, and this was his. And after he passed away and he'd become a big fan of my stuff, he wanted me to have it, so he got it to me. So this one was actually used with the Gurkhas. Well, he was, somebody in position of power, like an NCO or something like that, so he'd have a fancier blade. But you look at that one, And so this is a villager, means a working tool. And it's going to be rock solid. You know, this one is a slightly step up and is a lot prettier and got that embellishment. If they start doing a lot of stuff with that in there, you can tell it's probably meant. I'm not saying this one is weak. This one works perfectly fine, but it was a higher grade. And then finally, this one is an officer's kukri, and you can see it's got also fancy right through there and a little bit of engraving in it. In fact, right there's a series of brass inlays where they actually punch brass into it. This one has brass there and there. So this was an officer or something like that, and this was considered an officer's kukri. Notice the officer don't do the work that the working guy. This is probably like a master sergeant or something. This is like an officer, and this is like an everyday worker. Say, but I could do a whole video, and I have done whole videos just on kukris. See there? I'll put y'all back up after a while. Well, that's an hour and 41 minutes. Uh-oh. Hold on a minute. Tim Pierce, what's your take on the video survivalist eating minnows? How do you gut a minnow? Do you cook it like a French fry? If it's big enough for you to clean it, you clean it. If it's not big enough to clean it, scrape the scales off of it, put it in boiling water till it softens, and then kind of just pound it up a little bit, eat it guts and all. Survival situation. Didn't say it wasn't going to be gross, but you're hungry. You know, same thing with mice. The Apache, for the old people, they'd take an entire field mouse and just burn the hair off of it in the fire. And then they would roast it and pound it up, guts and all, and feed to the old, because it was easy for them to eat. They just pounded it up where it was just a gruel. All the bones were powdered up. So times get hard, you do what you got to do. I hear you. Steve, ever do or will do a tour of the gear room? There's a video that I did a little over a year or so ago where I was talking about how to store things, how to prepare. And so I did a tour of this room showing everything and how it's laid out in here. The reason I put my screen up is to keep y'all focused here and not go, Blakey, what's that up there? What's that up there? Because all it is behind me is on the far wall back there, it's rucksacks and backpacks. And then below that, there's storage tubs with like fire kit gear and all scars, everything. And then below that's the big tubs that's got tents and tarps and cook kits and canteen sets. And then over this way, you've got the sewing machine. And then you've got some tool stuff, and then you got all my knives hanging up over here and all the canteens and everything. And then, oh my God, over that way is a book collection, and, you know, it's just stuff. But the idea is I can walk in, and when I come in the door, that's where I've got my haversacks and my rucksacks and all hanging. And I'm able to pick it up. There's a predetermined amount of stuff that's already in the haversack. But let's say I want to add in whatever. I can turn the right and grab the field manuals for navigation or for plant ID or whatever I'm wanting to focus on right there. I then step over here and I can pull the hammock I need, the tarp I need, the food carrier I need, the knife I want, the canteen I want, the cook set I want, put it all together in 5 minutes and be out the door. In less than 10 minutes, I can have my whole gear packed and out the door. And the barrel that's got my hammock and everything in it sitting right there in the corner. I can grab that, and that's a full camp ready to go. If we're going to be gone several days, all I got to do is add food and water. And so it's that type of stuff. Dances with Empties. Before you go, what do you figure was the worst cap and ball Civil War revolver? I got mine and figured it to be the Star double action. The Star double action got a bad rep because of the timing, etc. But I believe that the Savage was probably the worst revolver. It doesn't point well, etc. But I would, I would really say the Lamat. The Lamat carried by a general, yeah, I can see that. Generals don't shoot except in self-defense. Or this way, boys, look, Brad. The loading lever on it is so weak. I was loaned by a good friend a Lamat to do a shooting video, and I put it on to my percussion revolver series. And I tell you, in it, I loaded one cylinder off the gun, and after that, I pulled the cylinder off and loaded it on the bench, and put it down, and took a short starter and a hammer and hammered them in, because I was scared I was going to bear down. It was just going to pop off. And many of the originals, the loading levers broke off of them. So that, to me, that was the worst cabin ball revolver. It looks cool, that shotgun in it and everything else, yet for an officer who's not going to really be doing a lot other than maybe personal self-defense, yeah, I can see that. But any others, nah. Well, guys, thank y'all so much for tuning in. I've really enjoyed it. And I hope to see y'all again next week. Everything looks good for next week. And so next Thursday night, we'll get back together. And till then, be safe. God bless. Say a prayer for the people in the flood areas and what they're going through. They need some help. Till next time, guys, I'm Blackie wishing you safe journeys. Have a great night, guys.